Welcome to Spark Faith with me, Dr. Kris Sargent. This show is about renewed health, rooted in truth, and restored by grace. What does finding health look like for you? Do you have a vision for your future self and a way to get there? I'm Dr. Kris, and after 33 years in functional medicine and a lifelong journey through brain health, weight loss, hormones, mindset, and faith, I know that real transformation doesn't come from willpower or white knuckling your way to wellness. It comes from gratitude. Honoring your body as the temple that God created. This show is about body stewardship, not shame. It's about rewiring your mindset, your metabolism, and your spirit to find lasting health without the grind. I'll help you cut through the noise, see opportunities instead of obstacles, and finally live the healthy, purposeful life you were created for. Let's spark faith and transformation together. Spark Faith starts now. Hey everyone, this is Dr. Kris Sargent. Welcome to the Spark Faith Show. I'm just love being here every week. And today we're going to do something a little different. We're going to talk about the physiology of forgiveness. And you're like, what the actual? Because, maybe we don't realize that the stuff that we hang on to mentally and emotionally actually affects our health. And so I've got a couple of questions for you. So hang with me for just a minute. Because I really want to dig in a little bit deeper today. And this is not always an easy topic for people. I will make it very clear in just a couple of minutes exactly what forgiveness is, and we will not be excusing poor behavior. So I'm just going to jump right in. And like I said, I've got a couple questions for you. Is there someone in your life that you think you've moved on from, or whose name, face, or memory still triggers some tension in your shoulders or your stomach or your chest or your face? Or have you noticed that your body can get triggered in that way when you think about a certain something or someone? Do certain memories like totally drain your energy or change your mood like instantly? Or is there a topic that you just like shut down that you do not want to go there? Do you ever replay conversations or someone's actions in your mind even years later, and your body reacts even before your brain can kind of catch up with what's happening? And then, do you feel stuck? Like physically, emotionally? Maybe it's a weight loss issue. Maybe it's another like chronic health issue, and you can't really explain why. Well, if you said yes, really, to any one of those, your physiology may actually be carrying a burden that your heart and your mind thought that it moved past. You're not alone. I've definitely been there, and I'm going to tell you a short story about my mom, who I love dearly. And for the record, she knows or knew, she's not on this planet right now, but she knew that this was going on. So this was open conversation between the two of us. There was just a time when my mom didn't always support me. We grew up like kind of a normal childhood-ish. And we were really good friends. But there was a time where I knew that I had to make some decisions that she was not going to agree with. And some of them were about when I had my babies. I had my babies late, like I was 40-ish when I had my babies. So I had already decided to breastfeed my kids and feed them more differently than she would have. And she would not really accept all those things. And we really got into it a lot, and it really crumbled some of our relationship. And I noticed that every time we would talk about it, my stomach would get all tight, my shoulders would tense up. I would just have this little scratchy thing like in the back of my eye and my brain. And I was kind of irritable. There was just this emotional undercurrent that disrupted moods and my reactions to her. And I had to realize at some point that all of this was happening to me and she wasn't bothered by it at all. So my holding on to the fact that she didn't agree with me was affecting me and not really her. So um, I really had this breakthrough moment when I looked at how she's really just a human. And I was like, wait a minute, how did she grow up? What were the messages she received from her mom or my grandma? What was going on in the 40s and 50s as she was growing up that really became part of her value system? And what happened when she, like maybe when she tried to breastfeed me and my sister, she wasn't able to. So when I started to look at this grudgy thing happening, this angst between us, I really realized like, wait a minute, she's just really sitting in her story, which is fine. My mom never chose to do any therapy. Fine. And but it gave me a different view of her and allowed me to forgive her for just doing and being the best supportive person she could at the time with the information that she had on board, right? Just being the person that she was, I could just let her be as a person, and she didn't have to agree with me. And so, this need to be right and this pride that I had, I also had to let go and forgive myself for having that. But I also had to forgive her for not supporting me when I felt like I needed it to. So today, we're going to talk a little bit about unforgiveness and what's happening inside our body and why really releasing that debt, if you will really start to change things for you. And at the end, I'm going to go through my 5-step forgiveness framework. So let's dive in. In this country, particularly, we really like to separate our physical self, our physicality, from our emotional and mental health. And actually, that's impossible because every time we are triggered by something emotionally, happy or sad, but we're talking about unforgiveness today, we get particularly negative emotions produce a sympathetic activation. So, what does that mean? That means your fight and flight system turn on, right? This can also lead to mild but chronic cortisol elevation. And we talked about that a few shows ago, so you can learn more about it there. But it also slows down your digestion and your metabolism, your gut motility, which we talked about on the last show. And it elevates something called cytokines. Now, you may not know that's a big word. They cause inflammation inside our body. They have some funny names like IL-6, TNF alpha, C reactive protein. Those are things that can actually end up causing autoimmune issues or an autoimmune flare, chronic pain, migraines, and then definitely IBS or some kind of gut issue. So here's the other piece, right, ladies? Particularly my peri and post and PMSy stuff. This will also end up causing hormone disruption from cortisol elevation. And we've talked about that in another episode as well. So I'm not going to dive too deep into that. And the cardiovascular effects of increased blood sugar, causing increased stiffness in our arteries, can cause heart disease and hypertension or high blood pressure. Interestingly, your immune system also can become suppressed. Did you know that one negative interaction with another human or in your brain, which I'm going to talk about in just a minute, can shut down your immune system for up to 24 hours? So if you're in this constant fight and flight, your immune system is not doing what it's supposed to be doing, right? And the emotional load definitely can take a toll, right? We ruminate and our brain is on all the time. This leads to decreased focus, decreased clarity, but it also uses up oxygen and glucose. And here's what I was going to say before about our brains being involved, because our brains cannot distinguish between something that is vividly imagined and reality. All right. Our brains cannot distinguish between something that is vividly imagined and reality. And so this starts all of those physiological reactions as well, particularly when we're negatively triggered, right? So, this is also how visualization can work for the positive. When we start to visualize something new and something different, that can also become our reality. So, and shut down the negative side of that and turn on the rest and repair piece that we want to have on instead of our sympathetic, dominant fight and flight response. So, our brains can actually help us move past this. And we'll talk a little bit more in a minute. But the emotional load of this whole unforgiveness piece really leads to emotional and physiological exhaustion. Like you're just bone tired, right? And where do we store all this, right? I'm sure that some of you may have seen or read a book called The Body Keeps a Score. And so that's a book about how all of our emotions can get stored inside our body, right? From unresolved wounds that keep triggering stress pathways. And so we store those emotions in our jaw, right? We can have TMJ issues. We can get these super big knots in our shoulders, right? We can totally get that. We get a tight diaphragm and we don't breathe right. We kind of just pant and breathe up here. Our gut, right? We know what gut happens. And then our hip flexors get really tight, which affects our low back and our hips. So as we become more wise, a nicer way, um, just know that long-term physiological exhaustion and fatigue from negative emotional events and some unforgiveness will lead to an awful lot of negative physiology. And so let's shift, okay? We're going to shift topics right now because that's a lot of negative stuff to start the show with. And so let's talk about what forgiveness can do for our body. Let's talk about some immediate things that will happen. Our cortisol will go down. Right? Feels like a great big exhale. We've talked a lot about the vagus nerve over the last few shows. And so we can get a better vagal tone, which leads to better digestion, better emotional regulation, and like our gut brain connection can definitely be improved. Our muscles and our fascia, like all of our connective tissue, can release. And all those cytokines that I talked about before, the TNF alpha, IL-6, all these inflammation will also diminish. So that's just some short-term stuff. What about some long-term stuff? Because honestly, if you've carried some stuff for a long time, you've already maybe feeling some of the long-term outcomes, but it's never too late. This is the best news, right? It's never too late to shift. And so we can improve our cardiovascular resilience. We can shift our metabolism, right? No more cortisol interference. We can have better blood sugar. We can shoot through our food better, like all the things. We can have better emotional clarity, better mood, and easier relationship connections, even if it's not with that one person. So, this stronger immune resilience is also a key player in all of this because nobody wants an autoimmune flare or an autoimmune disorder or a chronic disease. Nobody wants that. And I think I've said from the very beginning that the whole body does work together, regardless of whether we want to talk about it that way or not. So I'd like to define some terms first and lead in with a little bit of my faith foundation. And whether you're Christian or not, these are things that can help you move forward, right? So forgiveness is really all about just releasing whatever that thing is. It may mean that you put aside your own personal feelings about being right, about your pride, about your ego. Do you have to say, I forgive you to that person? Nope. This is something that you're going to do for yourself. You can if you want to. That's great. If they're not on this planet still, that's fine too. I'm going to show you in my 5-step forgiveness framework how to do that. Reconciliation is something that is not required. Reconciliation is when we go back into relationship with this person. We don't have to do that because it's going to take an awful lot of trust rebuilding and time to do that, and it may not be safe. And so that's where healthy boundaries can be put into place for yourself, because forgiveness is for yourself. And then restoration is that whole healing around the whole thing, and it may or may not include reconciliation, right? And this is really God's work. This is where we can't choose how the other person is going to be, but we can choose how we're going to be in relationship with God about this situation or this person or this action that may have happened a really long time ago. There was a story about Corrie Ten Boom, and she is a Holocaust survivor, about how forgiveness is really about obedience and the Holy Spirit and Christ, because he forgave us, right? Landed on a cross, died, buried, resurrected, sits on the right hand of God now. But he did that for us. And when she realized that that was a huge price to pay, she was actually able to forgive out of his forgiveness. She was able to forgive some of her Nazi captors. And so I think, but not out of her own strength, right? She had to put aside her own emotions and her own thoughts and remember that we're to live more Christ-like. So in Jesus's teaching, Matthew 18 talks about 70 times 7. Again, this doesn't mean reconciliation. It does not mean staying in an abusive relationship at all, physical or mental. It means the opposite of that. It means that you can forgive this person and keep a boundary, right? And here's the other part. We may like to be vengeful. Just saying, we'd like to have some revenge. We want to see that person pay for what they did, but that is not our place. We have to believe that God, out of love and his justice, will absolutely take care of that when we forgive, right? Because you have to understand, God is a little bit like a parent, and this analogy is going to break down really fast, but um, as a parent, we have to discipline our children, and he will provide justice for you in some way. You may or may not ever know, but that is his job, right? It is not for us. And Colossians is all about forgiving as Christ forgave. And then Ephesians 4:31 and 32 is really about like, put away the bitterness, like put that aside. And so here's the straight up truth, right? The straight up truth is that forgiveness is freedom. Forgiveness is freedom. Bitterness and resentment chains your spirit and your physiology, right? Forgiveness is freedom, but bitterness and resentment chains your spirit and your physiology. So all of that sounds great, but why is forgiveness so hard, right? Well, when we start to identify some wounds, betrayals, childhood trauma, any number of traumas, big T's and little t's, we have to acknowledge the reality is that whatever happened to you was wrong, right? That's the reality. But holding on to unforgiveness just keeps that wound active inside your body. The nervous system protection that gets created is because your body believes that letting go of it is dangerous. And so we've already said that what happened was wrong and that you don't have to reconcile the situation, but you can forgive the situation, right? Or the person. And so there's actually no danger if it's not currently happening. And that's something that we have to get into our heads, right? And this really becomes a spiritual battle, right? This is what makes it so hard is that bitterness is like a root, right? Like a weed, like dandelions in the spring, right? You think you've got one, but five more pop up, right? And so that bitterness just continues to spread. And it's like the Scrooge or the Grinch, right? The heart is just so small and it keeps getting smaller and harder that bitterness distorts our perception. And so that really makes it difficult to move forward. And we have some pride and we have to be careful with our own sense of self, right? So to forgive, your body has to feel safe, right? And your brain has to feel safe. So let's talk about how we're going to get there. And we're going to use some functional medicine and faith so that we can move forward to forgiveness. So let's reset our body first, right? We're in the process of forgiving somebody, and it is a process, and it may take more than one time, and it may be an onion that you get to peel. Ugh, hate those onions, right? However, Shrek wasn't wrong, or Donkey wasn't wrong, right? We're like onions. And so we have to do some breath work, right? That slow breath in and then a nice big sigh out, right? Those kind of things 4 to 6 times can start to calm our vagus nerve. Right? Let's find something to release our body or a somatic release. Getting our feet on the ground in the grass or the snow, maybe, or the beach can really start to ground our heart and our gut. Doing some crazy shaking out of our arms, right? Opening up our chest, like putting your arms behind your chair and just allowing your chest to open up. Some slow, gentle walking with maybe some spa music, like really just breathe, get out in nature if you can, and just gently walk and be nice to yourself. Because what happens to our body is we close in on ourselves and we can't breathe and we can't shake our arms and our chest closes in. It's really hard to walk like this. So grounding and opening will start to open up your body as well. And then our nutrition piece, we've talked a lot about anti-inflammatory nutrition already. Omega-3s, some magnesium, some turmeric or curcumin, right? Get rid of the hyper-processed foods, reduce your gluten and sugar, and those things will decrease those cytokines, those nasty cytokines, the inflammatory cytokines. So now that we've got our body in a better place, which takes a little bit of time, right? This doesn't happen in a day or a meal. We can reset our heart at the same time. So let's name the wound, right? Name that wound and write it down. Maybe write it all down, tear it up, burn it, shred it, whatever you have to do to help release that. And then really trust God for the justice. God is love and justice, like I said before. And you can have those good boundaries without being a judge. So, the 5-step forgiveness framework that I promised that I would tell you about. First, step one is to identify that draining person or situation or wound or trauma, big T, little t. Journal out their story first. It's going to be hard. You're not going to want to look at it. You're going to want to be like, they're not a person. They're just a beast. They have a story too. And then write out your story and really look at the reality of that. This will help build a better understanding, not excuses, no excuses, just understanding, right? And see them as a human being, as another human created in the image of God, maybe not acting like that. However, when we can see them as a human, that brings us back to gratitude. It brings us back to calming physiology, right? And it helps us understand. Then I want you to notice your body's reaction around all of that, right? I want you to map out, just draw a stick figure and map out what you're feeling and where. Like just draw a line to say what you're feeling. Is there tension? Is there heat? Is there a little niggle like in your brain, like I used to get? Is something tight? And then let's find a prayer, right? Or a mantra like, Lord, you know what this has cost me. And I am going to release that. I'm going to believe that you are the judge and you are love and you are loving me and you're going to heal my body and my heart. So thank you, Lord. And find that gratitude that you need to begin to let yourself heal. You may have to do that 2 or 3 times and then set those healthy boundaries. Love does not equal unlimited access. And then we have to create, step 5 is creating a no rumination rule. When you start this, find it and shut it down. I release this. I'm choosing peace. There's a whole bunch of things that you can say to yourself that will retrain your brain. It does take some time. So I just want to encourage you that you don't forgive because they deserve it. You forgive because you deserve peace, right? You don't forgive because they deserve it. You forgive because you deserve peace. And your body is not meant to carry someone else's sin, right? This is about freedom and not pretending. So forgiveness is a physiological reset designed by God, and that one memory, one person, and one moment does not have to affect your entire life. So tune in next week. We are going to dive deeper into some physiology of calories and maybe some weight loss stuff. And I have a really cool episode coming up about GLP-1s and that whole craze and some natural alternatives. So stay tuned, keep renewing your health, rooted in truth and restored by grace. Bye, y'all. I love you so much. Thank you. Thank you. You've been listening to Spark Faith with me, Dr. Kris Sargent. This show is about renewed health, rooted in truth, and restored by grace. Tune in every Thursday morning at 9:30 a.m. Pacific on the Transformation Talk Radio for more simple, faith-fueled steps to live the vision God placed in your heart. Are you ready to take the next step? Schedule a discovery call or connect with me at drkrissargent.com. That's DRKRIS Sargent.com. While you're there, download my free ebook, Endless Energy, the 6 non-negotiable keys to endless energy, and sign up for an upcoming masterclass. Don't forget to subscribe, like, share the show, and I'd love to connect with you on social media at Dr. Kris Sargent. Let's keep sparking faith and transformation together. Can't wait to see y'all next time.